Okay, shall we make a start? I mean, it's very informal, but I thought we have to start somewhere, and it's so nice. So nice to actually have. We ran this event last year, but it was online. So the idea of tea, we were all kind of drinking tea in our separate spaces, which was rather odd. Anyway, I'm not going to talk for very long, but it's great to see so many of you here, and thank you to Emma and others who have organised the event. My name's Stella Bruzzi, and I'm Dean of the Arts and Humanities faculty here at UCL. Now, if you're anything like I was as a student, or that I imagine most UCL students are, faculty is completely meaningless to you. I won't take it personally. I don't care that much, but it sometimes is useful. And I think it's nice to know what your, where you sit within UCL. We all understand that your first port of call is your department. So these are much more important people than me. These are the heads of department, or most of them, because those are the people you really need to know. Perhaps it might, that you only kind of come to me if absolutely everything else has failed, basically. But it's a great place to be. I don't know if so. I'm here to sort of say a few words of welcome to you. I think we've got some students online as well, and to give you a sense of where you've arrived. Firstly, well done. Finding a room on this campus when you're not used to it is always a challenge. And believe me, I was saying to someone who was upstairs near my office, where are I? Anyway, somewhere. Hello. Trying to find this room that my daughter was coming to. She had to come and pick something up. Completely lost. Kept sending me photographs saying I am here, and I said, "Oh, you're close. You're close." I was in meetings. I couldn't leave my room. So that is great. So who are we? So we are 9 departments, and I have to count them on my fingers because I forget. So what you've checked: UASC, UCL Arts and Sciences, Information Studies, Philosophy, Greek and Latin, European and International Social and Political Studies, which is not the best, doesn't exactly well. I know. Anyone doing EISPS? Anyone? Oh, yes. Well, very important department, but I think the name, and it is an even better name, the School for European Languages, Cultures and Society, and CMII, which is a Centre for Multidisciplinary and Intercultural Inquiry. Well, I mean, you imagine going for the job I always had to thought I better learn all these. Now then they get easier, but they're not here. English will be here, I think. John Mullen from English. I think we understand that. And the Slade School of Fine Art, and also Hebrew and Jewish Studies. Have I left anyone out? I think that's 9. Okay. That is that's the faculty. You will ask yourselves questions, especially if you're doing things like art, of where is history of art? Well, history of art at UCL is in our sister faculty of the social and historical sciences. There's not always logic behind these things, so if you need, it's all right. So I haven't introduced anyone yet. I haven't got departments' names wrong yet. So that is the faculty. We pride ourselves on our excellence in both research and teaching. We rank 6th in the UK in terms of research power, and we're in the top 5 globally for arts and humanities at UCL. That's not just us, I'm afraid. I like to think it's just us, but it does include the Bartlett, for example, and others. But arts and humanities have been at UCL since our inception, and we're coming up to, in 4 years' time, the bicentenary. And 3 of the founding professors of UCL were in languages and in Hebrew and Jewish studies. So 3 of the 4 founding professors, the other one was maths. So it's always been at the core of what UCL has done. And it's grown over the years. I mean, the Slade has, you'll get to know, you'll be meeting Kieran in a moment, but the Slade School of Fine Arts celebrated its 150th. Information Studies, its 100th, its centenary. Hebrew and Jewish Studies is 50 something years old because celebrated the 50th one, and Arts and Sciences is 10 years. Mm. And I'm afraid that there are lots of others in between. And we've got a new degree starting this next year, the BA Creative Art in Creative Arts and Humanities over at UCL East. So yeah, sorry, you're looking for. I'm not. That's correct. Yes, it is correct. Sorry. So Tim looked worried, and whenever Tim looks worried, I think I should be worried. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. I thought it hasn't already started. We've only just recruited the members of staff. So we are here at we're on Bloomsbury campus, but we have also got our tendrils stretch over to UCL East and on the Olympic Park. So roughly, my maths is terrible, but we're roughly, it looks just under 5,000 students, okay, overall. Roughly divided 50-50 undergraduate and postgraduate taught, and then we've got postgraduate research students, some of whom you will meet as tutors. So those are our subjects. We've also got a number of research centres. The Sarah Parker Riemann Centre, for example, for the study of race and racialisation is here in the Institute of Advanced Studies. Centre for the editing of lives and letters. Anyway, you will get to know us. Just kind of look at, you know, websites, look at our websites, and there are lots of events take place here in the IAS and elsewhere. So don't feel you have, you know, you will spend most of your time in your departments on your programs, but don't feel you have to be constrained to those. And this is this is part of our introductory program. We Ahead of the Curve, which you will have noticed comes from Christopher Nolan's film Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan, as you no doubt know, read English here at UCL. And I suppose we do like to think of ourselves as being ahead of the curve. I mean, when you see buildings like this, we are in a disciplinary way ahead of the curve. But when you then look around at the trunking and that we think, yes, it's a challenge being ahead of the curve in grade 1 listed buildings, but you will grow to love them. You will. And the attachment that people feel. I mean, I remember when another, I mean, I will name drop shamelessly, but another eminent graduate of English, Stephen Knight, who wrote Peaky Blinders and who did the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony was his, as a proud Brummie. We were having tea in the Provost office in this building, and he said, I'm going to go and find Foster Court. And Foster Court, to me, it looks quite a boring building. It probably does to you, but it obviously held a very special place in Stephen Knight's heart. And he wanted to go and see the building where he spent most of his undergraduate life. So, you know, this is the start of that great journey for you. Okay, getting to know and love the heating systems that seem to all the, like, you can always tell when someone's on a Zoom call in Foster Court, they've got the kind of, there's the steam coming up behind them, which is, I don't, what is that thing? Anyway, there's the plant at the back of Foster Court, which is big central heating. Anyway, you will grow to love it. You'll get to know your way around. You'll get to work out how to go through the Gordon Square houses and make your, I don't, this is what I'm meant to be talking about at all. I'm meant to be talking about the disciplines, but it is very important, okay, how to be able to get to places without getting lost. But there are many events taking place in as part of Ahead of the Curve. There equality, diversity and inclusion, well-being and other events. Sustainability, being led by Richard Jackson, who is
making interesting, which is just opposite where we are. And I've made that interesting because I have in my hand a little buckle. For those who recognize this kind of a buckle, it's from the top of my bike pack. It breaks regularly, and now I print it off on a 3D printer. And if you're interested in that kind of making, it's not just the kind of high-tech printing making, it's also jewelry, it's also woodcraft and all kinds of things. I think you might find the Institute of Making an interesting place.
So I'm Elizabeth Shepherd. I will also peek around the corner so you can see what I look like. Hi there. I'm the head of the Department of Information Studies. We are mainly a postgraduate taught department and we have 5 disciplines. So while we're not, well, we are very multidisciplinary, I guess. And we range from publishing, archives and records management, library and information studies, digital humanities, and then across to knowledge and information and data science. So we have staff who are computer scientists, mathematicians, all the way through the social sciences, all the way to English scholars and so on. We are beginning a new undergraduate programme that will start in 2024 at UCL East, Information in Society. So that will come on stream in a couple of years' time. But at the moment, we're mainly postgraduate teaching with research programme. And we also teach on the information management for business in the school. So if you're interested in lots of different disciplines and how they work together, come and talk to us.
Hi, my name's Tim Button. I'm the head of department in philosophy. That's the first department mentioned so far, which only has one word as its name. It's also one of the oldest departments in UCL. The first chair was set up in 1830, so that's pretty close to the start of UCL. And it's also one of the oldest subjects there is, so go team philosophy. But the department runs all the way back from people who study ancient philosophy, so 2,500 years ago, up to people more like me who focus on contemporary things. So I personally do things mostly at the intersection of philosophy, computer science, and mathematics. And then there's all the bits in between. I was asked to mention a place that might be worth checking out. Probably you've already seen Bentham's auto icon. If you haven't, you should. Bentham is a philosopher, but there are many common misconceptions about his relationship to UCL. So he was never a professor at UCL. He never taught at UCL. In fact, he died in 1832, so too soon to after the founding of the department to ever teach there. And he didn't leave his body to UCL either. So it's a bit of a mystery how we've ended up with this strange cadaver that sits in the student centre. I'll leave you to think about that, because apparently that's what we're meant to do. We're just sort of meant to look at it and think about it. And also I have a dog who I bring into work, and the auto icon terrifies my dog because he sits there with his uncanny plasticky face, because the actual head, the desiccation process didn't work.
I forgot my recommendation. Not very good at fulfilling the brief. Sorry, Dean. The Foundling Museum in Brunswick Square is a fantastic museum of childhood, especially about children who were abandoned over historically and towards the present. They've got a wonderful exhibition at the moment about radical empathy and about Asian and African children. If you're 21 and under, it's free to go in, and it's a really, really nice museum, and it's only 5 minutes walk. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Gesine Manowald. I'm the head of the Department of Greek and Latin, and almost as the name says, we are dealing with literature in ancient Greek and Latin, from the Roman Republic and classical Athens, starting from there. But we do nowadays more than the name says. We not only do Greek and Latin, but also the languages of the ancient Middle East, such as Hittite and Sanskrit. And we also extend chronologically, and that some of our colleagues look at what happened after antiquity. So they deal with the Latin of the early modern period, or the reception of ancient concepts in the modern world, like in modern films. So if you have some interest in antiquity and its impact on the modern world, you're welcome to come to us. Some of our modules require knowledge of ancient languages, but many don't, and they're open to students from all over the faculty. If you want to get the taste of ancient material, you can also do this at UCL in a much more pleasant way by visiting the Petrie Museum, which is right next, more or less, to the Institute of Making, and has a very interesting collection of ancient artifacts, mainly from ancient Egypt, but also related to the more classical ancient world, and it's well worth exploring. Have a good time here at UCL.
Hi, my name is Matt Kultkap, and I'm head of the department that Stella mentioned with a long and confusing name, European and International Social and Political Studies. And as you can hear, it's a department named by a committee where, you know, people just couldn't agree on a name that sort of worked for everyone unless it was really long and confusing. But what we do is essentially we offer the best of arts and humanities and social sciences at UCL to our students, all of whom pick language specialism and the social science specialism, let's say French and political science, or German and history, and then go off doing most of their modules in those two other departments where the language and social science specialism are based. And we serve as a kind of home and center for our students, but they get a very varied experience of what UCL has to offer. And our students are normally extremely ambitious, really good students. I remember when I first arrived here, I was blown away by how good they were, and I still feel this way about them. And they're often the kind of people who have already a career set in their minds, and they want to build it in a very particular way. They want to get the particular skills that they need for it. So these are the kinds of students that we cater to. It's an undergraduate department only at present. We have 3 different programs. We have one that's called ESPS, European Social and Political Studies, where students do European language, one called ISPS, where they do non-European language, and one called ESPS dual degree, where they do a European language, but they spend actually only 2 years at UCL. And the first 2 years of the studies, they spend in France at Sciences Po. So we work together at Sciences Po in this kind of arrangement. In terms of a nice place on campus, I went for a very obvious option, and I would recommend the main board that you have all seen. But it's actually a very interesting place if you look around. It has those tiny, weird observatories on both sides of the main gate. And it, of course, it has the steps of portico, which you can climb all the way up to the main library. And sometimes when there are events going on, you can actually go through, you can go inside when they open the doors. And it's, I think, a place with a really nice view on the main part itself and the cruciform building across the street. So don't just walk past it, appreciate its beauty, its presence. And there is also a plaque up there about when it was opened, I think after the renovation by Queen Elizabeth II.
Thank you. I will just stay on this side of the table because I don't think it makes that much difference. And also I've got very unsmart trainers on. I'm Claire Thompson. I'm the head of CELC's CMII, and I could spend my entire 1 minute telling you again what all those letters stand for, but I won't. We are multidisciplinary enough to have multidisciplinary in our name. We are also the largest department in the faculty, and we are one of the youngest, I think slightly older than arts and sciences, but dating from around 2010, as well as being amongst the oldest, because we incorporate subjects like Dutch, which recently celebrated its 100th anniversary, and Scandinavian studies, which also recently forgot to celebrate its 100th anniversary. But we were a bit busy, you know, there was a pandemic on. And we are roughly equally divided between our undergraduate offerings, which cover a wide range of mostly, but not exclusively, European languages, French, German, Dutch, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. I always forget one of them, embarrassingly, and Scandinavian, that's Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Icelandic. So most of what we teach is really rooted in the staff's expertise in both languages and cultures. And then at postgraduate level, we also cover those languages and cultures, but we have large programs in film studies, comparative literature, gender studies, health, humanities. So actually we could win that debate, I think, about, are the humanities good for your health? Race, ethnicity and post-colonial studies, early modern studies, European studies. I've probably forgotten one of them, but I could go on. We are, yeah, we like to think of ourselves as a very, very friendly place. And now that we're all back on campus, hopefully a very lively place as well, where lots of languages and cultures meet. So if you are a Silks CMI student, welcome. And I look forward to meeting you later on. In terms of a nice place to visit, I would recommend the Grant Museum, which is almost opposite the main quad. It's one of UCL's museums, and it's a museum of anatomy. Really lots of old bones in there. But my favourite part is that close to the entrance, there is a glass jar full of pickled moles. And that glass jar of moles has its own Twitter account. So go to the Grant Museum.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kieran Reeve, and I'm the head of department and the director of the Slade School of Fine Arts. I can see lots of my Slade students here. Thank you for coming. So the Slade School of Fine Arts, we're normally called the Slades. We're not an acronym, unlike lots of other with short names. The Slade is an art school named after Felix Slade, and we were established 150 years ago in 1871. You will notice the art school and Slade students as you come into the quad on the left-hand side, and it is just the left-hand side. We are the most friendly of artists, sculptors, painters, filmmakers, performers. The door isn't always open, but there's always times to come in to see what we're doing. We'll have a degree show at the end of the year. There's different events and performances, and so please come and see what we're doing at different times when available to do so. I've got a few. I should remember the places because I can follow the script on this, but I would say not just the Grant Museum or the moles, which are fantastic, but the Micarium, which is there's 20,000 slides which are held in a case. It's just phenomenal. I think the next place I'd go to is the Whistler Room, which is just off the Octagon, which were murals painted by Rex Whistler, and then located in this beautiful round room. I think it's sometimes open as part of Open House London, but that's a great thing to see. You've got to see it over the next 3 years, 4 years at least. And then I would also say, selfishly, it's the UCL Art Museum, which is just off the cloisters, just around the corner, which houses the UCL art collection, but particularly it has some of the most amazing work from our students over the past 150 years. Well, that's open just through the academic year, but it's lovely to see it today.
Hello, my name's John Mullen. I'm head of the Department of English Language and Literature. So we do language and literature, and sometimes that's slightly separately. So for instance, we have an MA in English Linguistics, which is just language. But for the most part, we try, especially at undergraduate level, to make them connect. And the literature we teach is very literary. And in fact, we're so conservative in our syllabus that we're quite cutting edge. And any of you who read literature will understand that paradox. But if you stand still long enough, the world comes back to you. And we teach literature across 1,000 years, and that's sort of not an option, that's a requirement. So we are, for instance, one of the only 2 British universities which requires people to do Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic as soon as they arrive. And Stella mentioned Christopher Nolan, one of our alumni, and I don't know if you see, anybody sees his films at all, but some of you must, and you'll know that they're full of slightly restive time shifts. It's his obsession. Forward looking, backward looking, shifts backwards, shifts forwards, and often in reviews of them, people will say, why is he so obsessed with these kind of chronological tricks? Of course, the reason he perhaps doesn't know himself, that he studied the narrative text course in his first year as an undergraduate of English at UCL, a course which is, I'm glad to say, exactly the same now as it was when he studied it, and is as cutting edge now as it was then, as Christopher Nayland has proved, because the first thing he would have had to do when he arrived here, apart from Anglo-Saxon, was reading the whole of Paradise Lost and trying to work out the narrative structure of that beautiful and inordinately complex text, which, like all good narratives, starts at the end, goes to the middle, back to the beginning, and so on. And he's never recovered from it. And actually, several of his films, unbeknownst to him, follow as best they can the narrative structure of Paradise Lost. He doesn't, I think he subconsciously sort of knows it. But anyway, I'm supposed to think of a place. I will offer you a place which is, I'm going to show you that I'm with it as well as traditional. I'm going to offer you a virtual place because, which reflects the real place, because you might notice as you wander, not actually within UCL, but also outside in the immediate environ of UCL, that there's all sorts of blue plaques and things around, that you're in Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury is an intellectual place, a literary place. Of course, it gives its name to a group of literary pioneers and artists, the Bloomsbury Group. But before they ever came along, it was an area where sort of slightly self-regarding bohemians used to mix. Welcome. And there's an extraordinary plethora of blue plaques, including to some leading literary figures whom we still teach in the English department. Virginia Woolf used to live just over there. You find a plaque to her. And if you want a guide to that, to the extraordinary sort of non-conformist intellectual and literary place that Bloomsbury was in the 19th century, some of you might, you can find samples of that in literature, actually. Some of you might know, I don't know if you do, Henry James's wonderful novel of Innocence Uncorrupted, What Maisie Knew, published in 1897, where a group of the leading characters go to an English literature lecture at UCL. Yes, well, how cutting edge is that? But that sort of thing is all reflected in a wonderful thing which was done, superintended by one of my predecessors in the English department, now retired, Professor Rosemary Ashton, called the Bloomsbury Project. And if you Google it, you will find you'll be able to get a map of all that was going on in the 19th century just around here. Extraordinary kind of intellectual and literary tumult of individuals and institutions, you know, everything from the first kindergarten in Britain to every kind of dissident political grouping and religiously unconformist gathering. So do have a look at that. It's a place on the internet, but it reflects the special and real place that you're in.
Brilliant, thank you. So, and there's also, couldn't be here today, Lily Khan is the head of Hebrew and Jewish Studies. Are there students from Hebrew and Jewish Studies here? Well, okay. Well, that's then we don't have to, we could have helped you find your. Perhaps you have already found it. So I think we've overrun slightly, but the we have got time for questions, as it says on the slide. Sorry, I've actually got it in front of me. Yes, tech is. But also there is tea and biscuits at the back. Are there any questions that you'd like? We will do our very best to answer them.